Hi there, my name's Dorothy Greer, and the name of my shop is Little Dot Designs and Creations. And I've started doing some crochet and quilting lessons, and most recently started with two 10-year-old kids and helping them get started. And so I made a small video for them on how to get started with it, how to be familiar with their surroundings, how to hold the hook and make chains and that sort of thing. So I'm going to leave that on here on my YouTube channel as part of a series, and other people can rely on that too. But this is my second video on this topic, and again, I'm talking mainly to those two children because my other classes have not started yet. But hopefully this is something we'll use on down the road. So anyway, today I'm going to talk a little more in depth about how to hold the hook and go on a little bit more into single crochet. We did talk about that a little bit, but I just want to recap on that. And this is as far as I'll go until we actually have our first sit-down tutoring session. So I'm going to have to stop and turn around and get my camera where you can see my hands and what I'm doing, and we'll go from there. But before we do that, there is one thing I wanted to show you. It didn't dawn on me that some people aren't even familiar with what a skein of yarn is like. So this is one it's a brand new skein that I've not touched. So some people pull from the middle. There's the yarn that comes out of the middle of the skein, and then there's the yarn that twists around the outside. And it's really better if you can use this middle pull. If you use the outside pull, you're going to have to take your paper off, and your ball's going to, wiggle around everywhere. If you can start to use the middle pull, your ball will pretty much just stay in place. And when you first start that and you pull on it, this happens to be a really good one. It just comes out easily, but sometimes there's a big blob of yarn in there. When you pull it out, you get a big ball of yarn, and you'll just have to kind of pick that loose and use that up. And after you get past that, it'll come out smoothly, just like this is. Now, sometimes you'll notice that it looks like there's one in each end, and you'll pull on one end, and it comes out, and it happens to be that wraps around the outside. So I just wrap that around and kind of keep it tucked in and use this. There are other things out there. This is called a cake, and you can buy some yarns in a cake, and they too pull from the center, which is real handy. And we'll talk more about that as we go on, because you can make your own cakes. Okay, I'm going to turn this off and turn my camera around so that you can see my hands. Okay, I'm back. I hope to where you can see my hands working. And I know this is an awkward angle, but this is really about the best I can do without just hugging around the camera, and then I can't see what I'm doing, and you can't see me. So until I can get a better camera set up, this is what we'll have to use. But I'm going to use this yellow yarn because I think you can see it much better than that gray. And of course, as we talked about in the earlier video, we start with a slip knot to get the yarn attached to your hook, and I'm just going to do that real quick. We've already talked about it. It's nothing earth-shattering, but I go around my two fingers one time, go around a second time, and this time I overlap it. I go under the bottom yarn, grab the top yarn and pull it under, and then I let go with these two fingers and pull on this. Whoops, see, I messed up. Trying to look at my camera, I need to look at my fingers. Go under, pull that through, and let go. And when you pull that, it's going to tighten up on your hook. Okay? There's many ways to make a slip knot, so don't let that discourage you. You can probably figure that out on your own. Okay, I'm just going to make a few chains, and then we're going to stop and talk about how to hold the yarn in the hook. And of course, a chain was just simply pulling the yarn through that loop that's on your hook. Then you have a new loop. Do that again, pull it through that loop. Do it again, pull it through that loop. Each one of those is a chain stitch. And you will hear in a pattern they'll say chain 1 or chain 2, and that's what it means. Grab the yarn, pull it through the loop on your hook. That's a chain stitch. One more time. Grab the yarn. Now there's such a thing as a yarn under and a yarn over. Either one works, whatever is better for you. Now some patterns will call for a specific way, but I've never really saw a lot of difference in that. But some people swear by it. So whatever turns out to be your preference. Now we want to talk about holding the yarn. And the best way I tried to think of an analogy to go with this, is if you think of maybe some rock star or some performer on stage. That performer is up there in front of the crowd and they're performing and they're getting all of the glory. And that's what this hand is. This is the hand with the hook, and it's the star of the show. It's doing all this fancy moving around, it's dancing around and performing for the audience. And usually when you watch somebody crochet, that's what you're looking at. You're looking at the star of the show right there, doing all the work. But really, the work happens on this side, okay? This hook is doing one job. It's pulling the yarn through a loop. Pulling the yarn through a loop. And that's really all it does. You do have to have a lot of wrist motion over here, and that's why everybody looks at this. But honestly, the bulk of the work happens in this hand, and I want to try to explain that. Okay, so if this is the star of the show, you usually have somebody else up there on stage with you. Maybe it's the band or a backup singer or something, and they kind of stand out, but they're not as much as this hook does. And that's your pointer finger. This pointer finger sticks straight up in the air, and your yarn wraps around it. Its job is to hold the yarn up so that this hook can get to the yarn. So basically, this finger's job is to make this star look good. Okay, it's just making the star of the show look good. This is a backup singer right here, or the band. Okay, so there's those two. They're on stage, right? This one just has to be more shiny and glamorous. Okay, now we have two teams behind the scene. First is this, your middle finger and your thumb. They are a team and they work together all the time. And their job is to hold on to your work, which right now happens to be this chain. They are going to hold on to the chain right up here near the hook, right at the hook. That is their job. Hold that. Don't let it move. It's holding it steady, so again, that the star can look good. The hook can get a hold of that yarn and pull it through there easily. All of these things are working together. But again, the hook's getting all the glory. Okay, so here's the pointer finger. Here's these two. Now we got two more fingers down here they're way behind the scenes. That's your ring finger and your pinky. And they are down here holding the tail of this yarn. Let me get back in order here. They are down here holding this yarn against my hand. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. So that it puts some tension on this string and it's not so floppy. So they have a very important job too, because if they weren't doing that, your stitches would be really loose and floppy. And sometimes it's holding on to the work too, just depending on what you're doing. So here's
all of my fingers doing their job. Really, my fingers on this hand don't really have a job. It's my whole hand. Over here, every finger has a job. Okay? Pointer's holding the yarn up. This team of these two fingers, my middle and thumb, is holding right next to the hook. And like I told one of the kids, it's holding it tight. It don't want to let it escape. And these two are holding that loose yarn down here in my hand. And it's kind of hard to hold that real tight, but you don't need to, because the yarn still has to flow through your hand. So you don't want to hold it so tight you can't get it to come through there. Just enough to it's not being floppy. So that's the job of the fingers. I'm looking at my work. I'm not looking at the camera, so I'm really hoping you could see that. If not, we'll go over it again when we get together, which will be a little bit later this week. Today's New Year's Day, January 1st, 2024. It really is here. So now we'll talk just a minute about single crochet. You've learned to do a chain, and the next step is to learn to do a single crochet. And that is just going, you're going to turn your work to where it's going, the work is going off to your left. And you're going to work a row of stitches right down on top of those chains. Then you're going to run back this way. You're just going back and forth in your work. And it'll build up, and it'll turn into something similar to this scarf that we're making. And I'm just going to make a few to show you how to do it. The first row of single crochet that is the hardest, and it's different than all the rest. This chain row is called your foundation row. If you look at this, they look like V's. They actually look like braided hair if you pull this up. So each one of those V's is a stitch. You're going to skip the first stitch, and you're going to take your needle, you can see this, and I'm going to push it down into that second stitch. And when I do, I only want to pick up the top thread of that V. And when I do, I'm going to pull this yarn over here through that hole. Then I'll have 2 strings on my hook. Okay, then just get a hold of this yarn again, and see my fingers are making sure they're holding on to this, and pull through. Okay, let me do another one. You can tell the one you just came out of because the hole looks really big where you've stretched on it. The next one will be your stitch, your next stitch. You're going to go in the top of that stitch like that. Hope you can see. You'll just have the one you started with, and you just went through one. There's 2, so you're going to get a hold of that yarn and pull through just that first one, and you'll still have 2 on your hook. Reach over there and pull your yarn through those 2. There's your second single crochet. Now I'm just going to do a few of those, and you watch me do it. I'm not going to do this whole row because I made this chain really long, longer than I meant to. But I'm just going to make a few single crochets here into this foundation row. And you can see as I do this how this end looks thicker than this chain end. So every row is going to get a little bit thicker. You really have to learn your position of your fingers, because you're going to be laying your work down a lot. Or like if I have to stop right here and reach over here and pull me some more yarn, then I got to be able to quickly get my fingers back in place. And you will learn to do that, and it is so aggravating to learn. But once you learn that, everything else is a breeze. Okay? It's all about how you hold that yarn. I'm telling you it is. Okay, so we've done a few singles into the chains. Now we're just going to pretend that I'm at the end of the row, even though we're not. Pretend that's not there. We're at the end of our row, and it's time to go back this way on top of that row. In single crochet, at the end of each row, you're going to do one chain stitch, which is what you did on the original row. So you're just going to reach out here and get this yarn and pull it through that one loop. That's your chain. And then you're going to turn your work around where it's going to your left again. So now we're really going to do the same thing we just did in this row. Another row of single crochet. The difference is in the stitches we go in. And the first row is different from all the rest. The rest of the way through your whole piece of the work, you're going to go in the stitches like this. So the first thing you see on your hook is the little chain that you made. You're not going to go in that. You're going to go in the next one. The next one is really your stitch. So you are going to push your needle not down into the stitch like we did on the first row where we just picked up the one thread. You're going to go in the front of the stitch all the way through that V. So the V is really 2 stitches on top. I don't know if you can see this. And when you do, you're going to get the thread. You're going to pull it through those 2 stitches, or 2 threads, and then you'll have 2 left on your hook, and you're going to pull through that. That's your first single crochet of the second row. And here's where you should lay your work down, get out one of your stitch markers, and put a stitch marker there. I don't have any with me here. Okay, we'll go on to the next one. Go to your next stitch. Now where you were looking at your work from the side, you now want to be looking at it from the top. And you can see those pretty little V's. So you're going to go through the front, push all the way through the V, which includes 2 stitches. Or I say stitches, but I mean 2 threads. And then pull your yarn through those 2. And then pull your yarn through those 2. There's your second single crochet of that row. Let me do 1 or 2 more. And when you get to the end of this row, you will chain 1 and turn and do exactly the same thing. So hopefully this gives you just a little head start or a little something to get familiar with crochet before you actually come to a sit-down meeting. And this week I will be having some sit-down meetings, and I'm going to be calling some people today probably to schedule that. So this is not hard once you learn to hold the hook. Remember, this is the star of the show. Okay. And I'm at my last one. When I get there, work my last single. I'm going to chain 1. I'm going to turn. And then remember, and this string's always coming from the back, by the way. So I'll make sure that's back there. Then I'm going to get my hands in place. I'm going to work my first single crochet through those from front to back. Through those 2. Then I'm going to lay my work down and get my stitch marker out and put in there. So that's really all I have to tell you today. And we'll go over this more in depth whenever we sit down and meet. And I hope that you are practicing your chains and practicing how to hold your hook, and that that's starting to feel more comfortable to you. So I will be talking to you soon.